All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to the winter 2022 Museum Studies minor colloquium. I'm really excited to have this opportunity for students within the minor to share in their internship work and some of the museum experiences that they've been having over the last couple of semesters in some cases. And also especially grateful to one of our alumna, Estrella Salgado, who will speak at the end and tell us a little bit about how museum studies has informed her education and her sort of goals for the future. Again, I'm Deirdre Hunterbury. I'm the Associate Director of the Museum Studies program, and I coordinate the undergraduate minor. And I also want to introduce Christy Elkins, who's on here today as well. There she is. She helps to do all of the administrative work and sort of support the program as well. So you are always welcome to come to either of us with any of your questions. For specific course advising, questions about internships, you can come to me. But Christy is also someone that you'll see in your inbox with information about funding opportunities and internships, etc. So I'm going to share a few slides here, partly just to look at the program of what we'll be doing over the next sort of 55 minutes. And most of you are already very familiar with the components of the Museum Studies minor, but for any who might be prospective students, I'll just quickly share what those are. So the Museum Studies minor is a 6-course, 18-credit program. There are 3 core courses and there are 3 electives. We do provide guidance on which electives are eligible for credit within the minor, and those are posted on our website in downloadable PDF form, and I'll share just a comment about that in a second. Christy and I are actively working on going through the spring, summer, and fall course guides right now, so that's something that is in process. I do want to point out Museums 409 is what we're really going to be talking about a lot today. And this is the internship component of the Museum Studies minor, which, as you'll see, can take many and varied forms. On the Museum Studies minor webpage, in addition to program requirements and internship opportunities, I did just want to highlight that we do have electives posted there. So you'll notice if you click on this approved electives dropdown, you can see there are PDFs posted with courses in the different designated areas that have already been approved for credit. And very soon we'll have new PDFs for the upcoming semesters posted there. And my last little piece of new business for the minor, which is exciting, is that we had talked about doing a newsletter for the minor, and we've actually shifted gears a bit. We realized that a newsletter might not be as sort of agile as we want to be. And so in collaboration with the certificate program in museum studies here at the university, so this will be a graduate student and undergraduate student blog, we thought a blog would be a better way for museum studies students to be able to share internship experiences, exhibition reviews, research in a more sort of facile way. And so as you can see here, this Museum Studies program student blog is coming soon. We're in the process of trying to hire a graduate student to be the editor. But I encourage each of you who enjoys writing or who has something they might think they'd like to contribute, in the meantime, you can reach out to me. Like, yeah, I have an idea for a blog post, and I will add you to what I hope will be an ever-growing list of students who want to engage with museum studies topics in this way. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. This is our program for this morning. So we've got a series of student internship lightning talks. You'll notice already many different campus museums are going to be represented here, as well as a library or two. And we also have the Ann Arbor Art Center, so an Ann Arbor institution. So I'm really looking forward to this. And then we will conclude with, as I mentioned already, Estrella Salgado will talk to us a bit about her work and her museum studies experience. So thank you to all for joining and to our wonderful presenters. I'll stop sharing now and we will move ahead with Madison, who will start us off.
Okay, can you guys see the slides? Okay, so just a little bit about me. I'm currently a senior here at the University of Michigan. I'm from Frisco, Texas, which is like 30 minutes north of Dallas. I'm majoring in history of art and pursuing a minor in museum studies. I'm also part of the Student Engagement Council here at UMA for the past 2 years. It's a wonderful experience. So if you're going to be here next year when applications open, I highly recommend to join. We work with like a lot of museum professionals at UMA and programming there. And then something I thought was important to include in this presentation is I've had 5 years of experience working at a children's STEM, like hands-on museum called SciTech in Frisco, Texas. And that was kind of like my introduction to museums and what got me interested, especially in museum education. And I worked as like a, how do I say it? Like an educator during the summer camps. So that was a lot of fun, but it was very much STEM related. And I'm not really good at science, to be completely honest. So being able to interact with art was more like kind of like my path. So that leads me to the Ann Arbor Art Center, which I am a current education department intern. And Ann Arbor Art Center is a nonprofit organization gallery that engages with the community in visual arts. You can take studio lessons there. You can interact with some of the exhibitions that they have. They also have local Southeast Michigan artists that have their art that you can purchase. And they also have like camps for kids. I work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a total around like 6 to 10 hours a week, just kind of depending on like our schedules. I've been virtual and in person just with this whole COVID situation. It does make it sometimes difficult to be in person sometimes, but it's been such an like interesting experience, especially working with education under Jean and Rachel. So some of the projects I've been working on this thing called Art Box, which basically is a box that includes instruction packets for an art related project. And we also put basic art supplies in the boxes so that they can create various different art things. And we have like the Glow Buddies, and then we have make your own fairy garden, build your own game board, and it's part of a educational outreach programming. It started after the COVID-19 pandemic for funding and also to make sure that there's accessibility with art in communities, which is something that I was really excited to work on because I'm a huge advocate for making accessible art for communities and making sure that people can really like interact with their own creativity. So I was really excited to work on that with them. And then why is this important? It provides art supplies to Southeast Michigan communities, especially like underserved communities in Michigan. So you can like donate boxes, purchase them. And so we worked with like Elle's Place, which is a healing center for grieving children and teens, where you can basically like buy one box and then it goes and donates to Elle's Place. And it's this whole idea of like art therapy being a huge staple in art and accessibility and making sure that they can have the opportunity, even when going through traumatic events in their lives, that there's something that art that can be a form of therapy or just kind of a break from honestly the like things that are occurring in life. So that's been a really amazing thing that I've been a part of. And then lastly, I've been really working, this is what I've been mostly working on is research oriented things. So the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion approach with multicultural children books and curriculum. So how it started was I originally was researching different types of diverse books that celebrated artists and art forms that we wanted children to really involve themselves in and kind of had the exposure of that. So I would go to the Ann Arbor public library, Amazon, anything that I could find. And then once I kind of found the books and made a whole list and everything about that, I then had to go and search curriculum. And just a little known fact, Pinterest is a really great resource for curriculum too, and lesson plans. So I was on Pinterest a lot. And so this is an example one that I have here. So Jean-Michel, he's a neo-expressionist artist from New York. And basically he made these really amazing free expression portraits. And so I had like an overview of the artist, and then it moves to like the connection, like the book with Jean-Michel. And so this is one of the books that I had, and it's part of this like big release of books about diverse artists. And so I kind of just talked about the details of the book, the pricing, where to buy it, photos of the book. And then the next page of the Google Doc would be about the lesson plan. And so we had one about having free expression and complex minds that children have, and basically letting them have the freedom to like create their own self-portrait that wasn't like just about realism, but it was about like really making sure that they were kind of wanting to do whatever they wanted, and kids see themselves in a different way, which is, I think, is really amazing. And so for them to like have that freedom of expression, I thought was really cool. And then the last page would of course be about the connection with the book and the lesson plan, and kind of the importance about why we should like celebrate Jean-Michel. So that's what I've been kind of doing with the Ann Arbor Arts Center. It's been such an amazing opportunity. It's right in downtown Ann Arbor. It's super close to campus. So I highly recommend checking it out. If anyone has any questions about it, feel free, like, DM me or like email me, anything like that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madison. That's an awesome start. And it's wonderful to see sort of the breadth of work you're doing, right? From putting together art boxes, but also this really, really important DEI work. And I do encourage all of you to stop in at the Ann Arbor Arts Center. They continue to expand their programming and their building. So really fun and exciting things are happening there. So we'll move on now to Harrison. I encourage you to add questions in the chat or comments for any of the presenters, just so that we can keep the presentations going. We'll use the chat for some of that sort of sidebar commentary, okay? All right, Harrison, are you ready?
As ready as I'm going to be. Things are kind of conspiring against me today. My tablet decided to die, so I'm doing this on my phone. I had a PowerPoint set up, but that's not going to happen anymore. Apologies. But I'm Harrison. I'm a junior in material science engineering and minoring in museum studies, obviously, as I'm sure we all are. And this semester I've been interning at the Conservation Lab in the Kelsey Archaeology Museum, working with Terry Roberts and Suzanne Davis. Davis? I'm not sure what her last name is. Davis? Okay. Apologies. So the big thing I've been doing, and something they've been doing for a long time, is something they've termed the Color Project. So a lot of objects in the museum there have some form of coloration or pigment that has been retained from when they were excavated or when they were painted initially. And so what they've been doing recently is taking photographs of it under different lighting conditions, UV, IR kind of stuff, to look for any kind of fluorescence that would indicate what kind of pigment it is. And on top of that, they've recently added a X-ray. XRF stands for, oh gosh, I can't even think of what it stands for. An XRF machine, X-rays fired at the object, and sorry, I was not super prepared for this, and my tablet dying did not help. Fire X-rays, you get characteristic X-rays back that show you what materials you have on the surface of the object. They've been kind of using these techniques to figure out kind of how color was used in the past and the ways in which it was valued, that kind of stuff. And so it's been really exciting being able to see all of these things happening, learning about what pigments make what colors, how they combine, what materials are in them. Especially being a material science engineer, I'm actually being able to see stuff from my major being applied to the museum field, which is something I've really enjoyed seeing. The other project I've been working on quite a lot is I have been given a little bronze statuette like this big to perform conservation treatment on. So what that's been is, so when bronze is buried or put in certain environments, it develops a film known as nantiquite, which is a copper chloride mineral. And when nantiquite is subjected to some kind of moisture or water, it transforms into atacamite, which is a copper trihydroxychloride. And it's a super soft, powdery material that, if it's allowed to spread, can just completely powderize an object. And so what I've been doing with that is I've actually been going through and finding the little spots of atacamite and picking them off the material. And I've really been enjoying doing that. Don't really have much else to say. If anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Harrison. It's really fantastic that you're able to have this opportunity to work in the conservation lab and apply some of your kind of more academic learning to a very specific series of projects where you can see, you know, that learning being put into action. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next, moving to the Museum of Anthropological Archaeology, we have Emma.
Hi,
Hi,
can you guys
Emma.
hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm actually at my other job right now. So if I put like my mask on or something like that, it's because of that. But I work at the RMC, which is the Research Museum Center. And I work in the Anthropology Archaeology Department. That's how I can only remember it. And what I do there is a little bit of everything, just because I'm pretty new to it. Like the last time I was inside a museum in this capacity was probably a few years ago. So they want me to get a little bit of everything, which I adore. So I've got a few projects going on. Some of them are like rehousing some endocast of skeletons of like rhesus monkeys are a lot of them. Some of them are human. Some of them are, one of them is a dolphin, which is really cool. So I'm rehousing those while making sure I don't ruin them. And I cleaned some objects. I recently cleaned a wooden spoon that's been chewed off a lot, and a yolk, which I always think of like an egg yolk, but this one was like a rest that you can like hang buckets on essentially. And that one was really dirty and I loved it. I loved cleaning it. And I've also taken like photography of photographs of different objects. Some of them are just like straight catalog ones that we're sending out and returning to their rightful museum. Some of them we're just doing for the catalog shots for our own catalog, and a few glamour shots to make them look really pretty. I think that one was probably my favorite. I really like messing with the camera and being like, this looks terrible. And this one looks wonderful. And doing a little bit of research on like the donations that we've got. We've got a few of them from one of our own curators. He brought in a few like blankets that he got from Syria is one of them. And I stitched the label into that, made sure that it was clean. So I learned to clean a bunch of different objects. And then I have another project going on where I'm going through a bunch of boxes from a curator in Texas who recently retired. And so it's figuring out when he was on excavations and on digs, what was he doing? What are these diary entries about? And how many of them relate to this trench site versus another trench site? And making sure that the catalog for that is correct. And those are my most recent projects. I also do like some labeling on that stuff. So it's a little bit of everything. Sometimes just a little bit of research of what in the world is this? Is this catalog thing right? Is this string currently in the correct place? Like looking at lab results too. So it's a little bit of everything. And it's just really cool because you get to learn everything. I know basically nothing. And so my supervisors, Andrea Blazer and Jim Moss, they like actively encourage me to ask questions like, what are you interested in? We can get you articles of things that you're interested in. Are you interested in present day looting? We can get you articles about present day looting. And what is it like for this community to try to get access to items that their ancestors had? So they're constantly asking me, hey, are you curious about this? Do you want to know more about it? We can absolutely get you articles about it. And every time I have a problem, they're exceptionally supportive. They check in on me all the time to make sure that I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, if I have any questions, and they're always available. And I love working at the RMC. I think like the biggest like pet peeve I have, which isn't really even a pet peeve, is it's just so tucked away from like everything else. Like it's off of, I don't even know what road. It's just very tucked away, and like the bus, you can take a bus to get it and you have to walk, and in the winter it's not great. But if that's all I have to complain about, then I'm pretty jazzed. But it's really great if you ever want to do like an internship where you get to do a little bit of everything and work with collections managers. The RMC is a really great place to go because they have a bunch of different departments just outside of archaeology and anthropology, and they have their own little things inside of those departments. So there's such a wide range of opportunities at the research museum centers. And I've gotten to meet a lot of really cool people, a lot of people who are doing research with our museums, using those endocasts that I mentioned for their graduate projects. And it's just a really great opportunity. So I totally recommend getting in contact with them. It's really worth your time.
Thank you, Emma. And I can second Emma's very positive feeling about the collections managers at the RMC. And actually, Andrea and Jim recently reached out to me because they are looking for more students. So if anyone has a desire to have an experience working at the RMC in the anthropological archaeology collection, let me know and I can share some of that information with you. Yeah, great. Thank you, Emma. Our next lightning talk will be Angela, a different kind of project, different kind of work.
Yes, hello. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, if at any point you can't hear me, let me know because my computer gets a little bit overwhelmed with Zoom. But anywho, so I work at the Art, Architecture, and Engineering Library, but more specifically, I'm in their Special Collections Department. So that's in the Duderstadt, kind of towards the back. We're a little tucked away, especially the work I do. In terms of, I kind of hang out in the refrigerated room with all the negatives. But anywho, so I figure I kind of will start with the chronology and then break down the kind of dual roles that I've found in this position. So I was hired specifically for a collection taken by John B. Cameron. Excuse me. So it was around the 60s and the 70s. He traveled all throughout France taking photos of medieval architecture, specifically from the Romanesque period, which is about the 12th century-ish. So we have thousands of negatives of his work, and so I was hired to take care of those and eventually turn them into an exhibition. So small chronology, it's been kind of a long time coming. So in the winter of 2019, I took an art history course on medieval architecture with Professor Achim Timmerman, and I fell in love with architecture as a concept. I'm definitely more so oriented towards contemporary work, especially mixed media, painting, stuff like that. But architecture felt like a way I could access the history of art history in a way that made sense for me. And then that summer I got to travel through the department as well, actually, and kind of see some of these structures myself. Come the fall, I saw an advertisement in Tappan Hall for a medieval images project specialist, so I jumped on that. From there, I joined at the end of the fall 2019 semester, and then I worked with the collections as a collection specialist up until the pandemic hit. From there, for the summer, I was able to work remotely, continuing to do collections work and starting to build kind of a foundation thematically for our exhibition. took a long year off, came back in fall 21 and got to hop back into this. And now I also am working with a graduate student and my supervisor to translate everything into an online exhibition. There's technically 2 exhibitions. We're using different software for different facets, but yeah, that's kind of the overview of the role. So I kind of wanted to give an idea of the 2 different sides of that. So as a collection specialist, that's working mostly with the negatives. So rehousing, scanning them, cataloging, research. It was really awesome because I got to use my French language skills, and it's really interesting because French work, like the patrimony is very deep there. There's a lot of research and a lot of reading to be done in French. And so that also applied to just finding coordinates and kind of looking at all these small little towns in France. And then just this fall, we found just a giant tub of over 1,000 postcards that were almost obsessively collected by Cameron as well. There's up to like 50 postcards per building. So I've been in charge of that project to sort those out, which you'll see some photos, but it's been really interesting as well. And then for exhibition development, that's been research. We're looking at a specific structure for our for the exhibition itself as kind of a case study. We're working with the Omeka software. I actually just got trained yesterday, which is very exciting. I learned a lot about accessibility guidelines and copyright and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, some thematic development, we're moving more towards text preparation and image selection. And then something really exciting for me was learning archival photography. So really like the halogen lamps and the, all the editing and all that kind of stuff. It felt very, very much so like a skill I was, excited to learn and to implement hopefully in the future. So I have a few photos pertaining to both those kinds of sides of my work. On the left, you can see all of those postcards. They're all in much different shape. Some of them are marked up. So 831-9 corresponds to one of the photos he took. That's kind of the way that he cataloged them. And it's so interesting because we're transcribing these logs he took, and they're all like hand typed on a typewriter. And so it's just so interesting to see the different ways that archival processes have changed. And then also you can see those stacks upon stacks of postcards because we're sorting them by location, and it's there's a lot of little tiny churches in France. It's super interesting. And then on the right, you can see this is the majority of what I've been doing, especially since I first started, was cleaning images is what we call it. So on the left, that's kind of the raw scan. And then on the right, that's the finished product. Obviously there's cropping, we adjust the levels of brightness, but mostly, especially with this one, you can see I picked kind of a tricky image because there's a lot that we had to clean in terms of little scrapes and stuff like that. It can be a little painstaking, but it's really awesome to learn Photoshop in a way that, you can really make images their best selves. And then as for exhibition development, there's not so much of interesting photos here because a lot of it has been research and, like I said, Omeka training. But on the left, you can see some of the photography setup we're using. We just experimented with different backgrounds too, in terms of like felt versus cloth versus paper, which sounds kind of menial, but it's really cool to see the way that objects can really pop and how you can format what you want to show. So that's been really awesome. And to have my name published as a curator of an official U of M exhibition will be very exciting. And so finally, these are just a few photos that I've like marked through the years, like my favorites. The bottom left capital is what most of them are. A lot of them are these really funky sculptural capitals you'll see. But ultimately, it's really awesome to have, the museum studies informing what I'm doing now. I think, when you go into museums, you hear so much of a focus on curatorial, especially with art history. But I really learned from this position that I love working with objects and the tangible and really caring for objects in that kind of way. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm learning a lot about library studies as well. So there's a lot of paths for me ahead, and it's exciting because I'm finally graduating. So I definitely want to head more towards a collections focused career. Thanks to John Cameron in the Special Collections Department.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Angela. I share Cameron's love of medieval architecture. So that was beautiful to see those images and the hard work you're doing to help to maintain those for future research and exhibitions. Thank you so much. So I think I'm going to slightly change the order. We'll have Fiona share her work at Museum of Art. But before we go to the Museum of Natural History, I'm actually going to ask Estrella, who's our alumna, to say a few things because she has to run across campus for a 1 o'clock class. And so we'll be considerate of her continuing academic endeavors. So Fiona, if you'd like to share some of your work, that would be great.
All right, awesome. So first of all, Emma, I was wondering, like, we might be using that spoon and yoke that you were talking about. I know that I'm not sure if that's the right one, but I'm working on an exhibition that it might be using a spoon and a yoke from a Michigan indigenous tribe. So I was like, is that the one?
That's totally it.
Oh my
Trina
God.
cleaned it so well.
Thank you. That's awesome. Okay, so very cool. I am interning at the UMA. I started this semester and I'm working as a research intern for the Department of Photography. And I'm working for the Associate Curator of Photography, Jen Fries. So I have 3 main projects that I'm working on. The first one is a big exhibition that's coming up starting in the summer that's going to run through next fall, and it's the Watershed exhibition. So this is a really big project that is mostly about the Great Lakes watershed, the environmental pollution that's going on there, its effect on indigenous tribes, its effects on the Detroit community, talking about environmental racism, talking about corporate influences, talking about Flint. So a really relevant project that includes a lot of local artists and indigenous artists. And then I'm also working on a donation of photography from Eric Lindblom. That's this, I don't know if you can see my cursor. It's a bunch of really beautiful pictures of grass that look like animal skin. That was one of my first projects that I did, was just go through them and actually help pick which ones we're gonna get. And then also this is Andrea Carlson. She is part of the Watershed exhibition, but she's also going to be putting up her own exhibition in the Vertical Gallery, which if you've been to UMA, it's like that really big wall. Right now there's a lot of like text on it. So she's doing that. She's a really amazing indigenous artist, and I've been lucky to like get to know her a little bit through meetings. So this is sort of like the bulk of what I do. It's a lot of writing, which I really like. So I write and edit labels. I also will do some writing for like the website or marketing. And then I do a lot of research. So I'll do research for artists to use in their work. I'll do research to write the labels and to get more context for the exhibitions we're working on. And then I'll do research to help prep for meetings that we have. And those meetings that I'm involved in will be with artists whose art we're commissioning, with donors, with other members of the museum staff and designers for exhibitions. So those like might include U of M designers, but also people from outside who we're bringing in. Just sort of a random side project is helping come up with shop ideas for Watershed. I don't spend a lot of time on it, but it's kind of a fun thing. And then also brainstorming exhibition design. So the more like artistic side, I guess, which is sort of newer for me because I'm like more of a writer than I am an artist, but it's kind of cool to be involved in that behind the scenes stuff. When we do presentations, I think my boss might use SketchUp because it looks like vaguely familiar with what we did in Museums 301. And so it's kind of cool to have that background. And then I just have one-on-ones with my boss. So here's an example week. This is what I did this week, just for some context. So on Monday, I had a meeting about poetry broadsides that we're gonna get for Andrea Carlson's Vertical Gallery exhibition, which is about the Burt Lake burn. And so I ended up learning a lot of technical things about like the printing press and like how poetry broadsides are made. So we met with the artist Andrea Carlson, and then Jim Horton, who's like this renowned artist, and we're bringing him in. And then Fritz Swanson, who's a U of M professor and also an artist, and then my boss. And then I also did research for a map mural for Watershed. So Bonnie Devine is that artist, and she's going to actually be painting a mural live. So everyone will be able to see her do it, which is very cool, on the wall, on one of the walls of the UMA in the exhibition. And it's going to sort of cover like Michigan's history, Michigan boarding school history, the treaties that were made to get the land on which U of M stands. So there's a lot of map research there. And then usually I work 12 to 5, but today, since I have this, I'm working 1:30 to 5. And so we're going to visit the Clark Library because we're working with a librarian who's going to help us get more information for Bonnie Devine. And then I'm also going to be doing more research for Bonnie Devine's mural. And I use the library databases a lot for that. And I'm like searching for maps. And then I'm also going to be giving some feedback on designs for Watershed and Future Cache, and then work on a write-up perspective for Future Cache. And then some of my main takeaways is basically everything is a collaborative effort, which is so cool. So it's not just with museum staff, but also with outside resources. And there's just a lot of meetings, and it's very cool to sort of be a fly on the wall when I'm not participating in the meetings, because it's all of these like incredible minds from different departments of U of M and totally different departments of the museum, like roles I didn't even know existed, like project manager. I didn't even know they had those at museums. And then it's a lot of like creativity and critical thinking, which has been really cool. A lot of writing and a lot of like building and maintaining relationships with artists and with other staff members to make sure that there's like a really good flow, really healthy communication, and that everybody can sort of like contribute their special talents to make a really cool and awesome exhibitions. Oh wait, that's it for me. Thanks. Also, I work at the the Art, Architecture, and Engineering Library, just at the front desk, and I always want to go and see that cool stuff, but it's so cool.
I'll show you anytime. Let me know.
Oh my God.
Yay, speaking of building relationships, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Fiona. I love the fact that all of you so far are working on a variety of different projects. You know, and this is really the strength of this kind of internship model and the fantastic sponsors we have in these museums and in these institutions, is that they're giving us this chance to sample things and try things and really learn by doing. So let's move now. We'll slightly pause the lightning talks and we'll hear briefly from Estrella, who is an alumna of the program.
Hi, everyone. Can you all see my screen? Okay, awesome. So as Professor Henneberry said, I'm an alum of the program, and so I'll be giving sort of a mini retrospective of my work and offering some suggestions for if you're interested in the minor, or if you're in the minor, really maximizing your time with it. So a full disclosure, I have always been a museum person. I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and so it's very fortunate that my mom took me to many museums, but I never considered working in a museum. For some reason, that just didn't click for me until I got to sophomore year, and I met a really good friend who mentioned that he was in the museum studies minor program. I thought, the what? That's a thing that exists. And so I immediately knew that I had to be part of it. And so fortunately, I was able to spend a really solid 2.5 years of my undergraduate career working with the museum studies program. So I'll give a brief overview of my education and the different things that I did within the program to give you a sense of, what I did. Obviously, there's not one right route to do museum studies. As if we heard today, people are doing all kinds of opportunities, some that I have heard of, some that I'd love to learn more because they're brand new to me. So just keep that in mind as I go through this. So this is loading slowly. I have this problem often. Or are we still on the page of me as a charming toddler? Okay. All right. are we now? Me as a charming senior. Terrific. So I just graduated from the University of Michigan last year. My senior thesis was about museums and department stores. So Fiona would love to talk about the gift shop ideas for Watershed because I love thinking about museums and consumerism. I majored in history, of course, minored in museum studies. Currently, I'm still at the university. As you can tell, I have that class at one. I'm in the School of Education, as well as doing the graduate certificate in museum studies, which is really just a tremendous expansion of what I've learned in the minor. My goal is to be a museum educator. So it really aligned beautifully. Thrilled that I chose to go to Michigan. A huge part of my experience in the museum studies program was, of course, the classes themselves, right? So this is a sampling of the museum studies classes that I took. And I wanted to highlight all the different departments that these are in. I mentioned that I was a history major, but the museum studies minor really encouraged me to take classes in departments that I would not have considered otherwise, like org studies and Middle East studies. And a lot of these classes, of course, they have really important theory and learn about the history and the background, but a lot of them also try to incorporate a very practical sort of final product. So at the top there, I have my project for my Egyptian prehistory class, and that was an online website that we made, an online exhibit. And so that was a really fun way to learn the skills that we've been using. That was a 5-person class over Zoom. It was 3 hours long, but Dr. Hart always made it fun. And knowing that we were working towards something practical made the class really nice. And then below is knowledge sharing. This one is still up at the University of Michigan Museum of Natural History. So go check it out, admire it. It's a really cool exploration of Indigenous work with plants, especially in the state of Michigan. So very practical. And then, of course, work. So I've had a couple major jobs at the university through museums. So I was a docent as well as a representative for 1 year at the Museum of Natural History. That's where this exhibit was. It's really an incredible place to work. They hire every semester. At the end of this, by the way, I will be posting in a chat links to all of these different places. So if any of them catch your eye, you can have more information about it. But that was a really tremendous experience in the very basics of museum work. I was in the education department. That's really what led me to the School of Ed. But I also got to work with things like our social media team and our exhibits team. And so a really fantastic entry point that is very accessible. We do not require that people go in with museum work. And then the job that I'm spending most of my time with right now is as an art handler at the Museum of Art, which is where I'm currently am. And being an art handler is amazing. I love getting to hold objects that I would not be able to if I was not in this role. It's an absolutely incredible opportunity to really expand my understanding of really the physicality of museums. But I also want to point out that pretty much any job that you do at the university can really help you towards museums. I was a campus tour guide. This helped tremendously with understanding how to give a tour, obviously, how to engage visitors, working as a communications coordinator, understanding social media management, even basic office skills that can be applied anywhere you go. And so if you're interested in museums, but not sure if you have the skill set for that, I promise that you've done something that will help you in the museum field. And then volunteer work as well as something that I do. Full disclosure, I was a work study student, am a work study student. So most of the things that I did, I was paid for. However, doing a touch of volunteer work is still a really nice way to spend a couple hours a week or even a month, just expanding your skill set. So I was part of the Kelsey Museum Archaeology Student Club as the governance chair, which was really fun. That is still running. I highly recommend you join. Part of the Clements Library as a student liaison. Of course, libraries are different than museums, but they are related, of course. And so I think it is really useful to get to know the sister institutions as well as, like I said, getting involved in institutions that are totally outside of museums. I worked on communications and outreach for the Greater Detroit Association of Phi Beta Kappa, just getting to meet different people and talking to them and connecting with them across the state. They would let me talk a lot about museums. I'll be giving a tour for them in the summer. And so it's just really terrific to just talk to as many people as possible. I'm an extrovert, can you tell? And then, of course, internships, a huge, huge part of museum work. All of these, with the exception of Fort Piquette, because that's part of a class, are paid. It is possible to find paid museum work and paid museum internships. I know that museums can have a reputation of being a bit difficult to get into and a little bit elitist. And sure, they can be, but I promise that there are lots and lots of opportunities where you will be fairly compensated. And so this is a list of the ones that I did throughout undergrad. I know it looks like a lot, but it was just one per summer, 1 or 2. And here I have two of my favorite projects that I've worked on. So one of them was an exhibit called Mental Health at Michigan. It was an online exhibit. And I was just really proud of this work. It was set up as a kind of long form article. And so a very different setup than, say, the one that I showed about Egyptian prehistory, which was much more of a traditional, here's an object, here's a caption, here's an object, here's a caption. And so getting involved in as many projects as possible will show you different ways of communicating ideas. And then the other one is one that I'm really enjoying because I'm working in a team. All of the other ones have been very independent work within a larger structure, but working with the Ford Piquet plant as a graduate student has been honestly such fun to get to work with other people who love museums as much as I do. And I got to be in an old car, so that was awesome. So my advice for you, do the minor. You're here, you're interested, maybe you're already in it, but it really is such an amazing experience. It is not a common program for universities to have. I mean, I stumbled into it. I did not realize that this was something that I was going to do, but I've had friends that have done internships at all places that I have, places like Mackinac Island, Greenfield Village, of course, UMNH, the Motown Museum, Toledo Museum of Art. Whatever interest you have, whether it's science or art or technology or history, you can definitely find some sort of museum opportunity for you that is, again, very likely compensated. I've either doing it independently or with the advice of professors, I've been able to find these opportunities. They're really very doable. My other piece of advice would be staying informed. Of course, Professor Henneberry mentioned the student blog, which should be really fun to look through, but just staying informed of the museum world in general, I think has made a great difference in how I approach museums and frankly, in how I can talk about museums in interviews. So there are a lot of different places where you can learn about museums. I'll be putting all of these links in the chat, but getting used to learning about the different organizations of museums, whether it's really local ones like the ones from Michigan, or whether it's ICOM, the International Council of Museums. Getting used to these places, how they talk about them is really critical in understanding the field and makes a massive difference in how you approach your everyday classes and your homework assignments if you can really position it within something that has great meaning. And then the last piece of advice I have is just go to museums. I go to museums all the time, quite a lot. And there's a little asterisk next to museums because some of these aren't technically museums. Is the farm a museum? No, probably not. Is the hunting store a museum? No, but they do have some sort of exhibit. They are trying to engage the public in some way. Go by yourself, go with your partner, go with your family, go with your friends, see how they engage with it. It's really something that is such a great experience to do. And if you get involved with places like I mentioned, the MMA, there's sort of young museum professional groups. A lot of times you can get free admission to these places. A lot of the times the admission to very local places is free or is $5 or something like that. You know, not everything is, extraordinarily expensive to get into. A lot of times your classes will take you to a museum as well. So every time that you get a chance to go somewhere, just take it. You'll definitely learn something or get something out of it. So thank you so much for listening. Good luck with everything, and feel free to message me as well or email me if you have any questions. I'll go ahead and put my info in the chat.
Thank you so much, Estrella. That was wonderful. We got to hear a lot about how very, very engaged you've been at Michigan with museums, and I appreciate your enthusiasm and positivity. And I know you'll have to sneak out once you deal with the chat, so thank you for coming. So we will move now into the University of Michigan Museum of Natural History. We've got several students. I think 2 of them are going to tag team on this. It looks like Stephanie and Matthew, but we'll start off with Lydia.
Alrighty, howdy everybody. Let me just pull up my thing real quick. Let me make sure I have the right screen. There we go. Hello, my name is Lydia Sandifer. I am in my senior year at the University of Michigan. I am Earth and Environmental Science major, which is pretty fun because museums is in the art department technically. So there's been some really interesting overlaps between art and science that I get to really explore in my internship experience as well as in my classes that I've taken as well. So what's my internship? Well, I've been a docent at the Natural History Museum since 2019. there's a picture of me next to everyone's favorite Majungasaurus. But my internship specifically, that was in spring/summer of 21. I developed a new HODS cart. A HODS cart is a hands-on discovery station. They're basically these rolly carts that the docents take throughout the museum and show guests with these hands-on activities and hands-on objects, different aspects that we want to highlight throughout those exhibits. So specifically, I worked with Brittany Burgess. Any of the other docents know her, and anyone who's pretty much had to do anything with the natural history probably knows her. But she's the student affairs manager, and she is excellent. But the project was pretty independent. It was mainly online because it was still pretty COVID-y then. Yeah, I just basically developed my own program. So my HODS is meant to go in the Michigan Gallery. If you haven't been to the Natural History Museum, you really should go. That is on the main level. It's all about Michigan and has different ecosystems. So my HODS specifically was about food chains in the state of Michigan, specifically around lakes and rivers and the area near that. So basically we had to write I had to write this big long guide for docents to teach it. And then I had to pick out objects to go inside of the HODS cart. So as you can see around the side here, there's a bunch of pictures of skulls and fish and things like that. Those were all, I picked those out, and they were able to be purchased for the HODS because of a grant for the museum for this kind of education program, specifically about freshwater and food sources and that. So I was able to buy whole new things to put in my HODS cart and organize the cart all nice and pretty like. And now it's available. Docents can choose to pick it out. If you bother to come out to the museum, you might see someone in the Michigan Gallery teaching about it. It was really informative to me because it just got me like a little bit more behind the scenes. I had been a docent for a little while before that, but it was really interesting to see how even just a small moving exhibit comes together. But to go through the process of buying new items and accessioning those into the collection technically, writing lesson plans and connecting those to the education and in the requirements of students, like that you can see at the bottom of this example page. It has the exact learning goals for the state of Michigan and what students have to learn. So I had to incorporate all those things in writing this, and it was a really good learning experience to get my foot in the door of education, and it really was quite enjoyable for me because I found out that it was like I loved it. But in addition to the Natural History Museum, I can't help but talk about it because it's where I'm at right now, not just in a white void. I'm actually at the RMC. I also work for the Museum of Paleontology. I work with Adam Roundtree. He is the collections manager of the vertebrate collection and the paleobotany collections. What do I mainly do there? Photogrammetry, which is this, taking a physical object and taking a ton of pictures of it and uploading it into a 3D model making software, and then eventually putting that online. So if anyone is really into old fossil parts, you can go to umorph.com, I think, or something like that. Just Google umorph. That is the University of Michigan online fossil repository of fossils. But those are some of, this is a Postosuchus pelvis, and that's just an example of one that I did. But just to tie everything together, I am also doing photogrammetry on the endocasts from the anthropology and archaeology collection as well. So it really just shows that all of these museums are so inherently tied together. It's fantastic because you get to work across the board. Other thing I do, I make cradles. That's literally what I was doing this morning before this meeting. So this is a bit of a whale that has to go back to Egypt. So I've been working on this cradle to package all of these fossils back down so they're nice and secure and they'll be nice and safe for their transit across the world. Then the last thing that I do is cataloging and collections inventory, which is tedious and time consuming, but I love it because you get to sit in beautiful, massive collections and just like let it all in. It's fantastic. So that was just a little highlight into life at the RMC because, I mean, everyone needs to know more about it. Everyone needs to try and get like a visit out there because it is like my favorite place on campus. But yeah, that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the little link in if you're interested in any of the RMC work and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. I love that. And yes, I agree. Everyone should experience the RMC. It's like a treasure box full of amazing things. And now, last but certainly not least, we're going to move to Stephanie and Matthew, who will share their work. And I know some people are heading out, so I just want to thank all of you for sharing your time today and for the great work you're doing in all our museums. So, Stephanie and Matt.
Hello. I don't know. Please don't look at my tabs. Okay, so yeah, we also work at the Natural History Museum. We are here right now. And yeah, this is me. I am Steph. I'm an English major.
I'm Matt. I'm a senior majoring in neuroscience and doing museum studies. And I've been having a lot of fun with our internship here. Sorry, the lights turned off because they're automatic. So part of our internship is like two different things. So like Lydia was saying, we do like general docent work that all the other student docents do, as well as doing specific internship projects. So I'm working on one and Steph is working on one, and then we're also doing one together.
So as docents, we kind of do general, like whatever needs to be done in the museum. So that involves running the host desk, we give people maps, answer any questions about the museum. We host like school groups, give them tours, run the Hod's carts, which Lydia mentioned. We have a picture of one here. Do general like tours for specific like visitors and programming, just anything that needs to be done. Basically, we are the people that do it, and it's a lot of fun because you get to like work. So my project is very like, it is us in our room doing behind the scenes stuff, but then this is kind of our way to like actually see how what we are doing works with the visitors, which is cool.
Yeah, so the project which Steph and I are working on together is an escape room planned to be in the museum for students as like a late night student engagement event. So it's open to all Michigan and non-Michigan students. And basically our theme is that somebody has poisoned the Huron River. So the students have to work in groups to try and sort through puzzles to find the cure to it. And they have about an hour to do so. So this has been a lot of like developing the story and coming up with puzzles and activities for them to do, which is mostly what we've been doing up until this point. But then we also have been working on like the logistics of actually running the event in the museum and trying to find like local businesses to sponsor with like prizes and stuff so we can give prizes to the groups who win or complete it in a certain amount of time. And that's been super fun, trying to plan like a fun event for students and also working on logistics and engaging within the museum in like a different context than before.
And that is happening April 22nd, and everyone should sign up and come because I think it will be fun.
Right, yeah, so my personal project that I've been working on, which is almost complete now, is discovery guides for one of the exhibits called Under the Microscope. So I don't have any pictures of exactly what I was working on because it's just a sheet of paper with questions. I thought that'd be boring, but I put some pictures from the gallery itself. So the gallery focuses on like life and genetics, our body's biology related topics. So there's a picture of one of the activities that visitors can do, like matching DNA-based pairs or building hemoglobin models. But I've really been going through and trying to write questions which school groups or anyone, because they're available on our website, can use to help engage more with the exhibits. So they're questions about specific state of Michigan learning objectives that tie directly to one of the parts of the exhibit, and it allows visitors to walk through and do a deeper comprehension than just walking through on their own. And I've been working, we have them for 4 different age groups, so K through 2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. And so it's been interesting trying to adapt what is mostly middle school and high school level questions down to lower age ranges like kindergarten and second grade. But I thought it's been a very useful experience and definitely beneficial for what I want to do.
Okay. And then I, like Lydia, am also doing a HADS cart. I'm doing one for our astronomy exhibit. It's called Measuring Time and Space. And I really like space, but the exhibit is kind of tucked away in a corner. A lot of people don't know it's there unless they are going to see a planetarium show or something. So I'm hoping that my HADS cart will kind of bring people in and let them know that, hey, this cool thing exists. And people should go see it because there are like some very cool things in there. So I have been trying to figure out how to have demonstrations that take these like very complicated like physics topics and make something that is enjoyable for visitors so they can learn a little bit, but also are not just like getting a lecture about how gravity works. So I have been trying to just gathering items and demonstrations that I can use to help teach these things, and also thinking about different age groups and who is going to enjoy what sort of projects. How much space do I actually have available? I've been trying to make working with a gravity well, which has been fun, but it's a very large thing and it won't fit in a cart. So that was a problem I did not think I would run into. But yeah, so it's just been fun. Lydia mentioned the learning guides. Those are taking me a very long time, but it's been interesting to figure out how to take this information that I know and how can I use this and make it something that someone else would be able to teach about. So I think it's just been helping me figure out how education works in a new way. Yeah. And I think that is it.
Yay, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. We are just a minute or so after 1 here, so perfect timing. It was a real pleasure spending this last hour sort of hearing from each of you. And I hope you can see some of the resonance between your different internships, and maybe it's piqued your interest to try something else in the future. So enjoy a wonderful weekend. Thank you again for participating in our colloquium. And I will be chatting with each of you, I'm sure, before too long. Take care. Thank you.